Hello everyone, I am Ron and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Hollins High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Alright, so welcome back, and in this video you can see that we already have our egg, and we have most of our stage, and we have our stool. In the last video we made the stool, and I left you guys to make your own stool texture. Here's the wood texture that I created for the stool. If you want to see my texture, I did this one kind of cheaply, but I made a wood. Here's my UVs for my stool. I used the technique that I made the wood door with to make the wood, and then I used a liquefy to get some twists and bends. I made a black and white copy that I used to create a bump map, and then I loaded that into Maya to create this little wood effect on the stool. This is a little bit too extreme. I didn't really go in and dial down the shininess of it, but I'll do that outside the video. What I want to do before we make the next piece is make sure we give our stool a name. So this will be stool. We should clear our history because all of these objects, many of them probably still have the history on them, and that just slows the system down. So I'm going to go through all of my objects here and just unreference all of them. Make sure I put my floor back on, and I will grab everything. Go up to Edits, go down to Delete by Type. We'll just do non-deformer history. That way, if Maya seems a little slow or sluggish, the reason for that would be all of that history data stored, slowing your engine down. So, with that all taken care of, I will reference pose all of these again. Click them back to R. Okay. I'll turn my curtain off because I don't need it. I need to create a layer for Eggy. So I'll select my Eggy, go to Layers, create layer from selected. This is going to be Eggy Whites. Layer. You could put it white if you want, so you know who he is. I will make a layer for the stool. You could just do a props layer and put both the stool and the microphone in here, but what if you needed to work on one and it was in the way? So stool, layer. I don't know what kind of color I want to give it. I'll just leave it blank. The stool, look at that, right on the floor. Awesome. If I select my stool, you'll notice that the widget of the stool is way over here. And the reason for that is when we combined these pieces of the stool, what Maya does is it creates the object and then puts its pivot point at the 0, 0 space on the grid, which is the center of the grid. To get around that, we can go up to Modify, go down to Center Pivot, and now that's in the middle where it should be. Now the other thing that happens is when we do that, you can see that our stool's origin is now set to 0, 0, but it is not in the center of our map. The reason for that is Maya assumes that this is origin, not this. So you have to do that manually and kind of fix it. So I'm going to put this back in the center. I will turn my floor off so I can see the grid. I'll go to my top view. Where's my stool? There it is. And to frame up on the stool, just select it, hit F. I'm going to hold X, and I'm just going to snap this to the center of the grid right there. Go back into my perspective view. So now this is centered. I'm going to go up to Modify, and I'll go to Freeze Transformations. So now my origin is a little bit more true than it was a second ago. So if I move this off and I type in 0, 0, 0, it'll put it back in the middle. I'm going to put my floor back on. And when I froze the transformations for the stool, I happened to freeze it exactly on the floor, which is nice. I'll just move this out to the front of the stage, about there. And I will hide the stool because I no longer need it visible. What I need to make now is going to be, actually I'll keep the stool on just for a second. I'm going to make the microphone. I'm going to do the microphone the same way that I did the stool. I'm going to have a cylinder, which I'm going to use to make the base of the microphone. And then I'm going to have a cylinder to come up for the shaft. And then I'll use a sphere for the ball of the microphone, and I'll use a cylinder with it that has been given a conical shape for the handle of the microphone. So, without further ado, let's get crack-a-lackin'. I'll turn the floor off again. Create polygons, cylinder, and we did 22 on the radius last time to get the base of our stool. To not be the same size as the stool, I'll be different. I'll just do, I'll say 18. I am going to have this thing kind of curve up for the base of a microphone. And if I jump into Photoshop here, let me go ahead and turn this piece off. Yeah, I'll save it. All right, so in Photoshop, we can take a look at our scene here. We have the stool, we have a microphone. And if you look at the microphone, it's kind of got a curve to it on the base, and then it kind of goes up. There's the ball of the microphone, and then that piece. So for this, I'm going to have this curve, kind of the same way I did for the stool. I'm going to give this a height, I'll say 5. I'll give the height subdivisions 2. I'm going to go into face mode, select these faces, R to scale it, and I'll just scale these in like so. Next, we can get rid of these triangles here. Again, I'm just going to line it up with my center line and then every other. And then do the bottom. And if I'm working a little bit quick, remember this is a video, so you can just pause it and then catch up. All right, so there's my stool, or the base of the microphone, and it has a height of 5. I'm going to push this up to 0.5, so it's right on the grid. So that's my Y 2.5, which is half of its height. So what we could do, we could extrude to create the pole of the microphone. But I'm not going to do that. The reason I'm not going to do that is it's easier to paint this if it's not one solid piece. Plus I don't want to do any sewing and cutting. So create polygons, cylinder. And it does appear underneath this one. If we hit 4 on the keyboard, you can see in wireframe there it is. I'm going to move this sort of up to about there. Hit 5 on the keyboard. Now, how thick do I want this to be? For the legs, I think we did... Actually, I don't remember what we did for the legs. Radius, let's do 5. About 3. I'll do 4 and then I'll taper it up as I go, which is fine. Actually, instead of tapering it, I'll just make it thin and then I'll give it an extra section so it looks like a microphone piece. So we'll do 3, and then the height, I don't know how high I want it to be, but it needs to be higher than the stool for sure. So I'm going to go into my front view. And I'm thinking probably, because Eggy is sitting on the stool, if I take Eggy and I put him right on the stool. He's going to be a little short. I can't get it from this view. So I'm going to make the microphone about his height, but it's going to be taller than the stool. So I can do a few things. I can sit here and play with the height here and just kind of figure it out. And that looks like it might be tall enough. Let's come outside and take a look. Yeah, it looks tall enough. Yeah, so I will taper it. Instead of making the extra section that I said I was going to make, I'll do that with the texture. And I'll show you how to do that inside of the texture map when we make it. So here's this piece. Okay, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to pull this off, go into face mode. I'm going to select this bottom section, and then hold Control, and I'm going to select a little bit higher. And the reason why I did that is so I can grab these faces on the bottom, because I don't need them. I'm going to cut them off. Up top, I will get rid of my triangles. There's every other, and I'm just assuming that this is my center line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to go to vertex mode, select these vertices, hit R on the keyboard, and I will scale these in the center scaler. That way it tapers up. If you want this to be a uniform, really thin microphone piece, you're welcome to. Okay, there's that. And now I'm going to create the actual microphone. But before I create the microphone cone piece, because if you look at the picture, I'm going to zoom in so you can see, a microphone has the little ball at the end, and then it has this little cone piece. Instead of doing the same thing twice on this cylinder to get this taper and this little cone looking thing, I'm going to duplicate the one I made for the rod here, and I'm going to make that as for the cone. So first things first, I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode, Control D. And then I will hit the E key to rotate, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees in the Y, or sorry, 90 degrees in the X. So there it is. And I need to shrink this down. So R, and I will scale this. And I don't want to go too small, so once I get the center scale about the size I want, I'm going to grab the Y scale, it's the little green one, and pull it in. W on the keyboard, I will move this up to position on the microphone stand. And it's okay that these overlap. If you want, you can make a sleeve or a collar that kind of goes over this so it kind of hides that it's inside this. I'm not worried about that because this is just going to be a very simple production. I will angle this. Actually, before I angle it, I'm going to put the little sphere at the end. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go into Create, Polygon, and then Sphere. Now I'm going to go into my side view, go into wireframe, that's 4 on the keyboard, W to move my sphere. I'm going to move it into place, which is going to be in this larger end of the cone here. So the way I'm going to do that is, now that I have it positioned, I'm going to kind of center it up. And now I'm going to hit R on the keyboard. And you can do the radius in here if you want to. I'm just going to do it by scale. So I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, middle mouse click, and I will scale this. And if you want to know how a microphone looks, you can always Google the actual shape of a microphone. We will kind of pull this out some, make it somewhat big, pull it, go back in my perspective view. Next, let me go on top, and then I can center it on the top view. There's a microphone. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to show you a trick so we can make the grid lines in just a minute. I'm going to go into my edge mode, and I will, whoops. Oh, I'm working in a very small size here. When you're working with something that's really tiny, the camera view does not always want to cooperate. Just like I did for everything else, I'm going to get rid of my triangles. I'm going to go in the top view so it's easier. And we know in our top view that this is the middlemost. So I'm going to grab, this one, Q to get rid of the little widget so that I can see. I'm just going to go around every other. And if you can't see them because we're on top of everything, you can kind of do a selection. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do a little marquee. That way I'm grabbing both the top and bottom at the same time. Marquee. Do a marquee. 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 Marquee select. Marquee. And that one. And if I hit delete, it deletes those off. And it should be deleted on both the top and the bottom. So if I look at the top one, those are clean. If I come down to the bottom, these should be clean as well. Awesome. Go back in the top view. So we have our microphone stand. We have the little stand, we have the rod, and we have the microphone piece and the sphere. I'm going to select all of those. I'm going to open up, push W on the keyboard, hold X on the keyboard, and I'm going to drag these to the center. And what that'll do is it will snap all these pieces directly to the center line on our origin. And there we have that piece. Now for the ball of the microphone, what I'm going to do is I will rotate this so that the lines line up with the cone. So I'm going to go into my side view, bring up my rotation tool, that's E on the keyboard, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to grab this little X, rotate 90 on the little red thing, and you'll see that it is rotated 90 degrees on the X right there. So if we select it, we can see little rings on the microphone and the shape of the cone. If you don't want the faces internally on this piece, you can move this off because we don't need them here. If you ever come back and you want to animate this and like maybe the microphone, this piece comes off the stand, then I would leave these here. That way you don't have to go back and put them in. But for now, I'm going to leave them. But if you never needed to take them off, you could. Put that back, Control Z. Now, what we can do is go and edit our UVs. So, just like we did with the other piece, I'm going to grab the microphone stand. I'm going to go up to UV Editor. And I'm going to do a cylindrical. So UVs, go down to cylindrical. We will need to unfold this. Remember, it comes out kind of gross. I'm going to need to select the edges of this and then cut them. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to jump into my top view, edge mode, select the edges. It should grab both the top and bottom edges at the same time, which is handy. Go back into my perspective, UVs, you can do cut UV edges, cut UV edges, unfold. And remember, we have to sew this back together. So I'm going to go up to edge mode, sew these, move and sew. Grab this one and this one, move and sew. And I will go through and sew all these. Move and sew. It gives us a little diamond shape, and we can unfold it. Alright, which one's the top? Those the top? Awesome. I'm going to rotate this so it's a little bit more center. I'm going to grab this piece. This piece and this piece will have the same UV layout, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to move those off. The sphere, on the other hand, since I'm not painting this directly, I'm going to leave the sphere's UVs about how they are. And my reason for that is I'm going to use a UV shell that is gridded like this. I mean, we could go through and get the little like peanut shape, but since this is so small and we're not going to be seeing this close up, I'm not going to worry about having it fine-tuned like that because we don't have to paint directly in the center. We're just going to give this a metal color, and then we're going to have this screen on it, and that'll give us these. So this will actually work for our case there. So I'm going to select all of these things. And what actually I'm going to do is I think that microphone's a little bit too small. I'm going to select both of these pieces here. I'm going to combine them. So mesh, combine. And then I'm going to, it just looks a little bit awkward. Let me grab this bottom plate. And I'm going to scale this so that it is smaller. Scale it in the X, I'll do 0.5. Y, Z 0.5. Wow, it's a little bit too tiny. Let's do 0.75. 0.75. That's better. And then I'll grab this microphone piece and I will scale it up. So hit R on the keyboard. And you'll notice the widget is way down here. I'm going to go up to Modify Center Pivot. That way I can scale this from its center point. That's better. And if you want to see my scale size, my scale came to 1.54. It doesn't have to be precise. .54 should be fine. I'm going to bring up the E key so I can rotate this because microphones are usually at an angle. And I will select both of these objects. And I will move them into position. And I will also put Eggy here so that I can kind of see what's going on. What I'm doing is I'm going to put Eggy on the position. Let me turn my stage floor on so I can see. And I'm in shaded view right now, so if you don't see your textures and you're freaking out, you can push 6 on the keyboard and bring everything back up. I'm just in shaded view, which is 5 on the keyboard. I'm just going to pull the microphone. Oops. Make sure I have all these together. Pull the microphone this way. And I will go back into my textured mode so that I can see where the microphone needs to be. So for Eggy, because he's kind of short, it might actually be funnier if we put the microphone pointing down. But people might not get it, so it's up to you. I'm actually going to put it back up, and I will just manually change the height of this by going into, I'll do it in UVs in just a second. So now that I have this kind of where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and combine these all together. If you want the power to move your microphone later, don't combine the microphone. But I'm not going to rotate the microphone after this point, so I'm just going to go ahead and combine it from here. So mesh, we will combine. And once we do this, again, over here, our pivot point gets moved to the center. So we will go to Modify Center Pivot, and it will do it at the center of our object. To shrink this down some, I'm going to go into vertex mode. I'm going to select all of these vertices, and I'm just going to move it down. Like that. Okay. Whoops. Go back into object mode. I will select this once again, and I will go into UVs. So UV editor. And you can see all of our UVs are stacked on top of each other. We can't work that way. So let's go into UV mode, select everything, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit layout, and that'll separate everything. But it does it in a way that I don't like. And what I mean is the pieces that I'm going to see easier are the pieces that I want to have the most space on our shell. So I'm going to make, first I'm going to rotate this. You see where my top is. Edge mode. So that's the bottom. My top is here. Let me go back into UVs. I'll grab everything and I will rotate this way. Double click on this. I will move it off. The next largest piece is going to be the microphone stand, or the microphone bar. Is this upside down? Where is the... Oops. UVs. Move it off. I'm going to select the edge. Okay, so the top is here. Select the whole group. I will rotate it this way. This one, microphone. That's the bottom of the microphone. So I will rotate them this way. This is the top of the microphone stand. So I'll put those over here. Again, you can cut these off if you're not going to see them. I know that I will never have to see that, so for me, I will cut them off. If you did some animation where this fell over and it broke, you would want to keep those. But I'm not going to see that ever again. So that's fine. And then these are the UV mode. These are the back of the microphone. I'm going to put those right there. This is the microphone cap, the actual sphere. Hit R on the keyboard. I'm going to scale these down quite a bit. This thing's going to have the most texture space. Put it in the center. R on the keyboard, we'll scale it up. Center it. This piece can go here. It can be a little bit bigger. It's fine. And these two pieces, I'll scale. Then I'll give the microphone a little bit more UV space. Okay, so there's our microphone stand and microphone all set up. UVs, I'm going to select this, polygons, UV layout, or sorry, UV snapshot. Size 2048, 2048, PNG, and I'm going to make this microphone UVs. Hit OK. I'm going to save my work from this point just in case something happens and it crashes, because that happens occasionally. Minimize. I will select this object, go up to Edit, Delete by Type, Non-Deformer History, and I will give the microphone its own layer. So Layers, Create Layer from Selected. This is going to be Microphone Layer. It's going to be kind of metallic, so I'll do a little gray. Make this named Microphone. And now we can go ahead and paint this thing in Photoshop. So our images, yep. So Maya images, and where did my microphone go? There you are. I'm going to drag this over into Photoshop. Again, we're going to name this UVs. So I will lock it. Background. Drop in the black color so we can see. Go ahead and lock the layer. And a new This is going to be our color layer. And I'm going to make this entire thing pretty much metallic all the way around, with the exception of these. So this will have a metallic color, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this UV layout piece to actually create the wire mesh on top of the microphone. So right here under our color, I'm going to grab 2 different shades of gray. Open this up. Metal has like an almost bluish gray to it, so I'm going to go into the blue. I'm going to grab a shade of gray. And I am grabbing way over here, so I might not even have any blue in it, but that's fine. A light gray, and then a dark gray. All right, with my two grays selected, I'm going to pick my lighter gray. I'm just going to drop that in, and that'll be this color. And then I'm going to go to Filter, come down to Noise, Add Noise, and this is going to put a speckling on it. I'm going to leave this as monochromatic and uniform. 5% is fine. You can do higher or lower if you like, and hit OK. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a motion blur to this. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. It's set to 45, 5%. That's fine for me. I'll hit OK. And you can see if we go in a little bit closer that there's these swishes, kind of like brush steel. We did this for the for a door on a different tutorial, which is kind of cool. And that'll give us this flat, like metallic color. We can do some things to make it shiny. We can do a specular map to kind of highlight and darken areas and whatever, if you really wanted to. But we're just going to focus on having this be metallic. And then right here on the microphone piece is usually a little bit more on the darker side. So what I want to do is I'm going to go up to my UVs, go up to my selection tool, grab a rectangular selection. I'm going to turn off my color so it's easier to see, and I'm going to marquee select across and grab this section of my UVs. And the reason I'm copying this is I'm going to have these wires on top of the actual microphone ball. So Control C to copy, Control V to paste. I'm going to pull this down under my UVs, toggle it on and off so it does work, but it's off center. So I'm going to call this microphone screen. I'm going to zoom in, so it's Control plus, and I'm going to line these up where the old UVs are. So grab my little move tool and just line this up. And I'm going to use my arrow keys to help me with lining that up. That looks pretty much on point. I'm going to turn off my UV layer, and you can see we have these extra pieces here. Get my erase tool, bring the brush size up. We are on the microphone screen. I'm just going to erase this line because we don't need that. So there's our screen piece. But I want this to be black. This is white as it is. So I'm going to... we should be able to do some fanciness with it. I'm going to try to invert it. It probably won't invert the way I'm hoping. Adjustments, so image adjustments, and I'm going to go down to invert. Turn that off. It looks like it made most of those black. which was the goal. I'm also going to make this section for the microphone darker. So I'm going to select these. And the reason I'm making this darker, I'm going to go over to where the color piece is. I'm going to go into Image, Adjustments. I'll do Brightness Contrast, see if I can drop this down. I'm just making this darker because they usually are a little bit. This piece on our microphone screen, I wonder if I can get these to be even darker. Let me go to Image, Adjustments. I'm going to go to Levels, and I'm going to bring the whites all the way down so that these lines are solid black. That's my output levels on the whites. And I can push the darks all the way up on there, and this should be flattened out completely on the lines, so they're a nice sharp black. Okay, I'll have my UVs off. I'm going to save this file, save as. Texture maps, and we are saving this as microphone. So T for texture underscore microphone. Texture map. Again, this is mapped to the UVs of an object, so we can't use this for everything. It can only be good for this particular object. D for the diffuse color. And actually, I'll take the D off real quick because this is going to be the PSD file. So that's the Photoshop file. Save as. I will make a targa, and this targa will be the diffuse. We didn't do this for Eggy Whites because I had no reason to have anything kind of pop out on him. But you could go back and do a bump map and make like his clothing kind of pop out, make the tie stick out more. But I'm fine where he's at. I will make this into a bump map. So the only part of this it needs to actually push out will be the microphone grid. So I'm going to select both of these pieces. And actually, can I turn that off? That's something. Okay. I'm going to select both these pieces. I'm going to group them. This will be microphone, diffuse. And then I'm going to take this group, I'm going to duplicate the group by holding Alt, click and drag. Turn my original off. I'm going to right click on here, merge group so it becomes a solid image. I'm going to go up to Images, Adjustments. I'm going to black and white just to make sure that it is black and white. And then I'm going to go over to Image, Adjustments. And for my levels, I'm going to push this up. I'm going to drag my whites up. Remember, anything dark will show up as recessed, and anything light will show up as like pushing out. So I'm actually going to hit cancel. And I don't need the metal of my microphone to show up as anything special. So I'm going to just select this area. I'm going to go up to Selection, do Inverse, hit Delete, because I don't need that piece to be raised. And on this piece, I'm going to go to Images, Adjustments, and I'm going to go to Invert. And the reason I'm inverting this is I want the screen of this to kind of pop out. Image, adjustments, levels. I'm going to make the whites very bright. Oops. Bring up the whites so they're very bright. And my darks so they're real dark. And that's good. I'm not going to soften these edges by using the blur tool. I'm going to see how this is going to look without blurring it. So there's that. So let me turn this piece. Control D to deselect. I'm going to save this out as the Targa. Save as Targa. This will be the bump. So underscore B. Save. Jump back in. I don't think we added a material to this yet, so I will go ahead and add. I'm going to do this because it's metallic and kind of shiny. So actually, that's probably too shiny. Let me grab that one. That's the antiscopic material. I'm going to right click on our object, material attributes. This will be microphone texture. Microphone texture. We can add in our diffuse channel. So go to my texture maps. Microphone. So there it is. If we zoom in on our microphone, you sort of have the little grid on the microphone. And it's a little bit darker, which was the goal. But now I'm going to make this pop out. So let's go back to its material attributes, bump map, and I'm going to grab the bump map file. Remember, inside the bump map options, hit the arrow, hit the file, and drag in your file. So there's this. It did come out with this little speckliness on there, which is not something that I want, so I'm going to go in my settings here. I'm going to hit the arrow, and right here where it says bump depth, I'm going to drag that down. Okay, so now we have all of the pieces sort of ready, and to get ready to do some animation and setting up our lights and our cameras. So in the next video, we're going to set up our scene so that we can begin the animation of our curtains. All right, I'll see you next time.